So just out of curiosity, how many people have heard of MySpace in the room? All right, yeah, you're all pretty old. Okay, great, excellent. That helps me understand. So my story starts with being 21 years old, and I was about to complete a really profitable real estate deal, another one. I was pretty excited about that. And the next thing I know, 2 detectives are flashing their badges in my face and telling me that I'm breaking the law. Well, before I tell you what happens next, I'm going to rewind a little bit, provide some context for how we got here. So in 2005, I got into flipping houses at the age of 19. And I didn't have very much money. I had a lot more time than money. So I had to find a way to make that accessible. And that's where I discovered option contracts. And option contracts are a tool that basically allow you to control a property and also have the right to market the property even when you don't own it. So you may be wondering, how did I end up in the crosshairs of Portland's finest? Well, it all started with a new realtor that didn't really know what she was doing, which is fine. Option contracts are kind of an obscure tool. But what happened was I had this property listed for sale. And she brought some buyers by. And when she was going through the process, realized, and an offer hadn't been made, but she was going through the process of evaluating the property and realized that I was not on the deed of the property. I was not listed as an owner. And at that point, she got suspicious. And instead of, contacting me and being like, dude, why are you not on the deed? Or, what's your authority to, be involved in this transaction? She contacted the white-collar crime unit of the Portland Police Department. And, thinking that they're onto something and, hoping to catch me in the act of this fraud, the 2 detectives with the realtor hatched a plan. The detectives would be posing as the buyers, and the realtor would be a realtor. And they called me and said, hey, we want to come see this listing you have. I said, that's fantastic. Would you like to come down and ask or answer some questions from the buyers? They're really excited about the property. I'm like, that's a little unusual, but I was still relatively young and I wanted to make the deal. So I was like, I'll get in my car, and I drove down there. So I got in my car and I drove down there, and I get out, and the next thing I know, the 3 of them are descending on me like rabid dogs, just shouting things like, you need to tear up this option contract. And they had a copy of my option contract. I was like, where'd that come from? And then they were telling me, you're breaking the law. You're not allowed to do this. And I was in another shock, because this is the first time anybody had said anything like this to me. And obviously you got some detectives there, so it's like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. And so basically what happened is I said, you know what? Let me just explain. Let me explain, and then we can work this all out. So I explained, what I was doing, why what I was doing was perfectly legal. I explained to them what option contracts were and something called equitable title. And as I was explaining this to them, I could see the face of the realtor and the detectives start to change. And then the realtor shouts out, Nick, if I want to make more money, I just work more hours. And the detectives, yeah, how is anybody supposed to know that's what you were doing? I was like, well, it's public record. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's public record, this option contract. I recorded in the recorder's office. It's like, that's not true. We looked. I'm like, okay. So I walked them over to my car, a little Ford Escort 97 at the time. And, I pulled out my laptop and opened up the PDF, and I showed them the recording sticker on the document. Again, said, you're stealing this person's house. I'm like, excuse me? The seller and I worked on this transaction for 2 weeks before we arrived at the purchase price and terms that we did. We're happy with the deal here. You're the only ones that aren't, happy with the deal. So at that point, I started to get a little upset and frustrated with them. I said, you know what? It's my turn to ask the questions. First and foremost, am I under arrest? No? Okay, wonderful. Great. Next thing I want to know is, are any of you here attorneys? Are you an attorney? Detective 1, Detective 2, are you an attorney? Realtor, are you an attorney? No, none of them were attorneys. So I was like, fine. Then I'm going to leave here because we have nothing else to talk about. So I got in my car and I drove away. But that's not where the fun ended. When I got home, naturally, I called my attorney and was like, hey, can you confirm with me what I'm doing is actually legal? Because I just, I had 2 detectives question me. And he's like, what? He's like, no, what you're doing is absolutely legal. And I was like, oh my gosh, breath of fresh air. At least I thought. So the next day, the doorbell rings. And at the time, I'm 21. I'm living at home with my parents still, all right? It's a long story, but I was living, there for free. And, but they were at work, and so I was like, all right, someone's got to answer the door. So I went to go answer the door, and I opened the door, and there's a reporter and a news cameraman on my front porch asking if I'm Nicholas Cook. Well, holy shit. So my adrenaline jumps, I slam the door, grab my phone, call the attorney and be like, I have these people on my porch questioning me. What do I do? And he's like, well, you can ask them to leave the property, or you can answer the questions, or you don't have to. It's up to you. But if they want to talk to you, they'll probably keep bothering you. And I was like, what I'm doing is not wrong. It's legal. You said it was legal. Everyone largely seems to be happy with the situation, except the people that are not party to the transaction. So I was like, I'm just going to go out and explain. So I spend 40 minutes answering every question that they have, walking them through the process, educating them about the whole thing. And so far they seem overall pretty satisfied. They say, the story's going to air tonight. And before the reporter leaves, he says something to me. He looks at me and says, I'm not sure I believe you. This whole time, you never made eye contact with me. And I'm like, you've got a camera this close to my face, dude, and you ambushed me at my house in the morning. I'm not even dressed for this. So, whatever it is, I was like, I don't care. But then they left. And then I started to worry, and my stomach started to feel sick. It was in knots. I was thinking to myself, I'm 21 years old, and I'm literally about to ruin my business, my reputation. I had some other real estate deals going on at the time. Like, what if they see this thing? And I was just, really concerned about what was going to happen. Well, the show aired, like they promised, which was unfortunate, but it did. And what was interesting, though, is that only about 30% of the show, or the episode, whatever you want to call it, was actually about my real estate transaction. 70% of the episode was actually about my MySpace page. They had taken photos from my MySpace page of me going to Mexico, San Francisco, hanging out with friends. They even pulled a photo of me skydiving. That was part of the story. And when I realized that the story was not about if I was doing something right or wrong, or if this was a battle of good or evil or anything like that, but they were just literally there to make me look like some playboy wheeling and dealing, living the high life, I got mad, especially because out of that 40 minutes, they showed 15 seconds of my actual interview. So, at that point, then I also started to get worried because I'm like, well, how is this going to be perceived? Is my reputation in fact going to be ruined? Am I going to get hate mail, like real hate mail? I'm going to have some sort of public beating. I don't know. And so I just waited and waited and waited. And I didn't get any hate mail. And no public beating came, so that was nice. What I did get is I had random strangers contact me and offer to invest with me, which was an interesting change of events. So that was a nice little win. But this story taught me a lot, and this experience taught me a lot. And so I'd like to share with you a couple things that I took away from this whole kind of experience, especially as time went on. The first thing is you always want to advocate for yourself. Even if seemingly credible people are telling you that you're wrong, you should trust yourself. Number two, don't trust the media. They don't care about you, and they don't generally care about the truth. They're selling entertainment. So keep that in mind. Number three is you want to protect your privacy. Anything out there can and will be used against you. And then the last thing, which is probably the most important, is you will survive. Even if you think the game is over, it's not, unless you quit. Don't quit. Thank you.